Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing live show number 336, second show of 2022. Thank you, as always, for joining me, both either live or playing our recorded broadcast, and for our simulcasting on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. And last count we were a little over, well, we had actually 39 countries that were listed as having watched. We, of course, translate the show on its recording down to 11 languages that are our highest volume languages that are helpful, hopefully, to those that are in those countries. And thank you also to those that watch us live in time zones that I would just not expect. The APAC area in particular, and some EU. We have a lot of people from France and Spain. Thank you so much for that. And we do hope that you get to enjoy the rebroadcasting of our show Wednesdays at 11:30 a.m. for both Sydney, Australia time and UK London time. So we try to make sure that the times are a little bit more equitable for the playback to that. I also appreciate the kind words for everyone that has enjoyed the fact that we have kept the pattern of the show being one topic for no more than an hour. That way you can decide if this is a topic of interest for you to come join us. And of course, as a reminder to everyone, as much as we use this platform, live webinar, the link that is shared for people to engage with us is actually the least used link out of comparison to everything else. Everyone watches our simulcast rather than joining us, and I would love the participation on our show here to reflect people to being able to come in and actually contribute to our conversation here on the simulcast as well on the webinar series. So for that, let's get started with the topic today. I made an interesting, controversial statement because of the time of year that we're in for a few things, and we'll bring that into the discussion. I made the topic statement, get in line or make a new one, making leadership decisions in 2022. The inspiration of this topic for me today, and by the way, part of the topic's inspiration came from some of the feedback I got from people that are enjoying the topical conversations of here now issues that they're not seeing on other programs of content that are all about fluffy expectations and what did you just buy and how did you what are you doing in this particular channel, which are all helpful dialogue. Please, I'm not trying to dismiss those conversations as being irrelevant, but they're kind of consistently similar to other platforms that are also showing the same kind of conversation. We opened this hotel. I'm at this executive level making these decisions that don't seem really tangible to the how can that affect my daily decision-making process? What do I need to know today? And that's the inspiration of our show, has been for the 8 years we've been doing this every week, of what is applicable for us today. And this day, being the week that it is in January, we're seeing the notifications in the news feeds of all of the new board announcements for a lot of our associations and organizations that we look to for guidance and insight and direction. HLA, AHLA, HAMAS, HSMAI, for those, the Association of Hotel Ownership, for HAMAS, asset managers, HSMAI, Hospitality Sales Marketing Association International, American Hotel Lodging Association. These are organizations that are beacons for our industry, or should be beacons of our industry, in the guidance of what needs to be known and how the industry needs to respond and act in accordance with all that is ever changing in our world. And so the boards of these groups are very critical in that process. For anyone not familiar with most of the processes of these boards, it's a progression. It's a political progression. Much like politics are for our government, you start small and grow big. You first get a part of the group, then you get a part of the boards and councils and affiliation associations that were within the group, like you are part of the marketing board or the revenue management board. And I'm referring more to the HSMI program, which I'm very intimate in every aspect of those, in particular having been of all that. And been on other boards for other things. And as you demonstrate working knowledge and value to what you volunteered for or are participating in, you're then invited to go into a larger spectrum of responsibility, different boards that have more oversight. You're invited to participate in different things. You get shown to be presenting good at the products that the conventions and the seminars and so forth. And you're brought up, so to speak. You're groomed, so to speak. Just like politics, where you start local, turn regional, turn state, turn national. Congress goes to Senate kind of thing. Senate goes to presidents, what have you. So the idea for this progression is kind of made in parody a lot of times on shows like South Park and so forth, where that by the time you turn into a legitimate candidate for something, you've had to either surrender a lot of your purpose of why doing it to attain that equity of like you're being considered, like you had to not be that Boy Scout, and that's a bad negative term, of a naive person that is wanting something to change but doesn't realize the politics of changing it. And you've had to concede a lot of your ambitions of what you think are real driving forces to accommodate the people that are against those for their own reasons. You have to concede things that you want and give to other people so that they support your things, the politics. And I bring all of this up because our associations and our organizations are not as dissimilar as we wish them to be from that same process. I don't think they have the same constraints and the same high pressures to the governmental politics of ascending through the ranks, but there are similarities. If you irritate the wrong person and that person is in a superior position and or in an authoritative position, it is less likely that you will advance to the next level of relationship with the association. And as such, it's always good sometimes to quell your drive to a better time that way you have more authority to introduce your purposes, unpopular or whatever it may be. The things that made you want to do these things other than ambition and in the hopes of changing things, you sometimes have to keep in a back pocket until you're in a position that you can exercise that because of the leverage over all that would dissent against you. I know I'm speaking in circles, but it really is a progression of conversation. And I'm not saying all these people that have risen up to the now levels that are guiding these associations are all of that. Not at all. We've had vanguards and people that have been avant-garde of like, oh, we're going to do this, and have driven themselves into high levels of responsibility because what their message resonates with people, and they have the popular support that others don't want to challenge because it puts them in a negative light. Those are rare. Those are rare and far between. Usually what happens is you develop friendships, relationships, and associations that before you outwardly, politically, or publicly disagree with one of your fellow board members, you usually settle it in the relationship you have established with them over a beer, in a conversation, in a closed door committee discussion. You usually try to resolve that so there's always a unified perspective from the panel or the council or the board that is at that level, that executive level. It sounds like I'm being negative about all this, but this is the process of all society. It's not anything that's anything out of place. Saying, well, that shouldn't be the case. It should be democratic process. No, democratic processes doesn't work for this. It's a republic process. Republic being by representation of a large number by a few people, and that process means concessions and communication between those people that have like peer values and responsibilities and the organization. So we're at this point now that, as I mentioned before, these panels have now changed their guard. Everybody that is at the top of the pile for all these associations has groomed themselves through the process to get there. All of last year, they were the lady in waiting. They were the person that was going to go next. Now, whether they were announced as such or were aware of the fact that they were in the next position, like vice presidents become presidents kind of thing. You were placed in the position based on the value proposition that you're exposed to the content and information that you will be responsible for making decisions on. And as such, it's kind of a prep to understanding what you are being asked to do. Nobody wants, quote, Boy Scout, which is, I don't know what you want me to do, but I think I can really make an effective, good change. And you get placed in a role that you are well over your head on understanding all the mechanisms that are happening around you. And you don't know how to influence what you need to make the changes that you were brought into the role to do. So again, it's not a bad thing that I'm describing, but it's sometimes in ways a dysfunctional thing, because I referred to 3 particular points, which is related to our topic about getting a line or making a new one. Most positions, when you get to a level of being able to make effective decisions because you have the authority to do so, you're faced with a few things. One is you don't want to be the one holding the bag of stinking poop when things go wrong, because at the top of the organization means that you're responsible for the organization's decisions. And if you're an ineffective leader in that organization where people work around you because they don't respect you and or work around you because they can because you're unaware of them, then you are basically the scapegoat for other people's decisions. You don't want to be that. Nobody wants to be that. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. In that sense, being the bad guy is sometimes a good thing. We'll get to that. So because of that, you temper your decisions. And you temper your decisions through basically what I consider a decision-making process. The initial decision is it to the good of the people that we represent? That's the idealistic, wow, are we doing the right thing for everybody that, literally we answer to in our organization? Coffee. The second decision is, How does that affect our ability to effectively run as an organization? How does it affect us? First, it's how does it affect the people that we represent? And how does it affect our organization? Are we risking our entity's existence by making these decisions? And then the third one, the final decision, is the sad decision. And the sad decision is usually down to the role of, are we the first to do this? Some people relish the idea that they're first at something. Not this case, not in the leadership role of the responsibility of retaining power, because first means risk. If I'm the first to do something, if it fails, it's doubly bad for me because I took the risk to do it. It was unproven, untested. Do these words sound familiar? Okay. So a lot of times, one of the largest questions that get asked is, who else is doing this? Who else has done this? How successful were they doing this? Which means it goes to my topic statement. Either you're getting in line, meaning following what somebody else has done, or you're making a new line, which is, I'm going to do this because this is what needs to get done, even though I know nobody else has tried this before. The challenging part that I ask everyone from our show and from perpetual conversations this year, that if you're a part of these organizations, the person that has the least risk is the people that have not asked, that they don't have an agenda of what they're trying to get out of it, but really the intent of trying to solve or create a solution for something that they feel adamant about. And that comes from the volume of people in a consensus. Nobody wants to be unpopular. People make unpopular decisions and they realize that's the responsibility of their role, and they assume that and they take responsibility. I'm all good for that. But nobody truly likes to be the person that is not liked by the people. So for that reason, if you can show that there's a general feeling, not just you, but a general feeling that the decision should be a certain way or a thought should be done a certain way, then that needs to be something that inspires you in the masses, voice of the people kind of conversation. That's where you see the demonstrations and the protests and things. It's trying to demonstrate that there's not just one or two people that are thinking like this, but a shared feeling of multiples of people. That same existence runs in our organizations and associations. The same thing that drives our staffing and our teams that are wanting better work that we have restricted because of profitability and so what have you, all those things, that makes them push back saying, no, we're going to gather together, we're going to unionize, or we're going to collaborate together and represent to you that we want more out of our relationship with you, is the very same reason that we have to approach our associations that way. Challenge the associations. Don't accept what's being fed to you by them. Ask why they think that they do. Ask why they made the decisions that they did, so that they can validate beyond the. To me, I'm in amazement all the time. I see politicians, high-level politicians, vice president, president, senators, congressmen. They never answer a straight question. Is the sky red or blue? Well, what do you think it is? Or whatever. Everything is about not answering that question because they don't want to be held to a decision of that. I'm not saying that all of leadership is like that, but you learn that skill. You learn that deference to ambiguity so that you can land one way or another. I used to call it, still do call it, deniable culpability. Close enough to a project that you can take credit for its success, far enough away from the project that the blast doesn't knock you down, that you don't get blamed for it. That sweet spot margin of, oh, I always thought alone that was a great idea. I was very supportive of that, blah, blah, blah. No, you weren't. You were near it, close enough to be able to say you did that, but far enough away that if it's like, well, I mentioned to them that I didn't think that was good, or, that just seemed like I was going down the wrong path. I really wasn't all in on that one. It's an ambiguous little middle ground that a lot of leadership does. Why? Not because they don't want to be doing things. It's because it diminishes their ability to do things in the future if they're wrong enough in the past. Let me explain that. We all have been in board meetings or have been in organizations where decisions are being made in a collaboration. You have representatives for different entities, whether it's even at your own property, and you're having an exec level meeting or you're having a leadership meeting, and you're having people together, and there's decisions that have to happen. If your idea is always the bad idea, meaning even when it's, say, let's try it, and it fails, you begin to score chips on the negative side. Like, well, Lauren hasn't been right yet. The three ideas that we kind of went with, and we thought, well, why not? We should try it. All three failed. So now this idea from Lauren, you know what? I'm not in on it. I think, and even though it probably was an idea that was going to run, and it might have been the one winning one, you're fighting now the baggage behind it. I often used to refer to this as like a tractor pull. If you're not from the South, and tractor pulls may be an odd analogy for this, but tractor pulls have these huge monster tractors with multiple engines. It's really fun to watch, really noisy too. But there's a sled behind them. And as they come out of the gate, their objective is to go as far as they can before they can't go any farther. The sled starts easy. No problem. It's sliding along. This big engine is just dragging it right along. But as it moves forward, the weight begins to shift, so that makes it really hard to drag it the final distance. There's a strategy to that. Well, a lot of that happens in our constant decision-making dialogue. Is when you're new to a position, you have a honeymoon period. You have a chance where people will give you the benefit of the doubt because they don't have a history of you to know whether or not you're talking out of your hat or whether you really do know what you're talking about. That comes proven over time based on the decisions you make and the process results from them. So with that honeymoon period, you can get a lot of things started really fast and push forward. People are like, sure, let's try that. Well, yeah, we tried it before, but that was with whoever it was. Maybe you'll make it different. But as you begin to chalk up negative results, it gets harder to get people on board. And eventually you'll tip the scale where they're just not confident in you. Now, add it back to the meeting program. The dynamic of those kind of meetings, and I've been in every tier of meetings, been on the bottom of the meetings food chain, top of the food chain. I've been at property level, I've been at corporate level, I've been at brand level, I've been at multi-unit level, I've been at ownership levels. And there's a difference. Ownership, well, we'll get to that. Anyway, when you're in there, you have the voice, but that voice has credibility based on the scorecard you have. If you come in and your peers are contrary to what you're doing, then that scorecard comes up in dialogue. Well, Lauren, remember that time you did XYZ? That didn't work. So what makes you think this one's better? That gets thrown right on the table. It's a Shark Tank. By the same token, if you're on the good side, be like, hey, John, XYZ didn't work last time and you're disagreeing with me. And I'm going to bring that little card out and throw it on the table going, yeah, you don't have the record to really say that this is the right one. The idea is to spur logic in this. Now, ownership, or those in charge of the meeting, have different roles. They have the role of allowing the, two men enter, one man leaves Thunderdome mentality. Like, y'all fight this out. And the last one that has the wherefore to beat back everybody else, that's the idea that you win, right? Then you have others that are more balanced, more leadership. They look at the knowledge base of each participant and are knowledgeable enough about each participant to know what motivates their perspective. And they add that into the weight of what is being discussed. And their job, if done well as a good leader, not as a manager, managers just put fences around things. They cope. Leadership is the solicitation of the participants' strong points to incite their contribution of those things in a safe place of, I know you haven't had a successful idea recently, but I think you're onto something for what you are really knowledgeable about, or you wouldn't have your job. Please push that. Bring up what you're safe in talking about, knowing that not everybody's just going to keep pouncing on your bad last idea, but that you really do know housekeeping operations. And you're very adamant about the negative impact of this decision on operations that you're very fluent on. Let me listen to your expertise. That's a solid leader. Okay. That same said leader doesn't ask the proverbial questions that always get asked at C-level. And I'll tell you what the final decision circuit is on everything. It may have started out, this is good for our guests. It may start out good for our associates, our team members. It gets down to a fundamental 3-question pronged request. How much does it cost? How much are we going to make off of what it costs? And the third one, which is the killer of all great ideas, who else is doing it? Because it's a safety net. Because even at the top, in order to be at the top, like we talked about, like with association changes and so forth, is enough bad decisions doesn't keep you at the top. And a big safety net of is, well, that big company over there did the same thing, so it seemed reasonable that it would be successful for us. It's a scapegoat. It's a don't shoot me, shoot that. The decision was based on all the information, which included somebody else's efforts that we respect, that they would have vetted it. Here's a little secret that people don't often assume. Bigger doesn't mean better. Larger doesn't mean thorough. A lot of times I've been in so many rooms and ownership groups, and somebody says, well, Marriott's doing it, or Hilton's doing it, or IHG's doing it, or Citizen or whatever, Hyatt's doing it. And that validates it that, well, if they did it, it must be right. I've been in those same conversations at the brand, and they are no more insightful to the research that's there, even though they should have more resources, even though they should have vetted more, even they should have had more protocols in place before the topic even rose to that level of dialogue. But they don't. It's not saying they haven't. It doesn't mean that they don't do it in other circumstances. But I've been in plenty of meetings where their research, their insight is based on the same flawed logic that a smaller operation is making the same decision on. The same data or lack of data, the same level of data, the same depth of data. There's no real thing that says Marriott always does it this way for a decision process. It's absolutely not true. They're not making bad decisions all the time. I'm just saying that everybody thinks that the next person is better. You've seen those little cartoons where somebody's walking and somebody goes by on a bicycle and say, man, I wish I could have a bicycle. The person on the bicycle goes by the person that has a car saying, man, I always wish I had a car. The person in the car goes over and sees somebody flying a plane and says, man, I wish I had a plane. Everybody thinks that it's better for the next thing when really, in fact, everybody doesn't realize that they're better than the other person that's looking up to them. Just looking at the content you have in front of you and making decisions based on it, and trying to not exclude the fact of awareness of what other people do. Okay, that's valuable. It's not ignorance to say that I want to know who else is doing this. I'm not saying discard the question. I'm saying that the question shouldn't carry the weight that it does as a validation of a pro-con. It should influence the decision awareness. It should be added to the pile of all the things that we can identify. But it should not be that, well, if Marriott's done it, I got my scapegoat, because if it totally trashes, I can just say, well, we did what, look, you love Marriott, boss, and Marriott did this and we did it. Don't shoot me. Realize that, we're just following the pattern of somebody else that should probably already have done it better, blah, 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 blah. That's where I go back into the conversations of how these decision processes get made. So why did I bring this up in relationship to, either stand in line or step out of line, make your own, is I am challenging for everyone that watches and listens to the show, and I will continue to challenge this entire year, the idea that decisions need to be made for the interest of what the purpose of the associations are for, and not the political agendas of ascension, not for the political agendas of being right in comparison to your peers, and not in comparison to just the sustainability of the association. Because I believe we give too much deference to long-established associations, or too much deference to brands, or too much deference to large organizations that they're too big to fail. The old mentality, my gosh, they must have been doing so much right for so long. Even though we little ones don't know what those big decisions are, we just have to trust that the big guys know what they're doing. No, challenge it, because the big guys are just as lost. And if anything that the pandemic has shown us, they're just as lost in a worse way than we are. At least we knew what to do when it came to, well, gee, we should put some information about the COVID stuff on our website. Do you think Brand knew that for the first 8 months? Nobody did, because they got rid of so many people because they made a bad decision, and so forth and so on. We can point all day to why larger isn't better. Okay? Larger is just larger. Larger should have more information. Larger should have better decision-making capabilities. But larger also has the negative of like a tractor pull. It's carrying a lot of weight and struggling to get past all the baggage of it, because everybody at the level that the decisions are being made at have reasons to be there, and agendas that they have, and safeties that they have, and the politics that they have, and the ascension interests that they have, and everything else that may make it the deniable culpability of, let me tepidly support that so that if it does succeed, I can claim it. But if I also know that if it fails, which, because I know all the politics around it, it could happen that way too. It's fall one side or the other. I'm far enough away that I can't be hung on me. I can't, and literally that's a term that gives you, it's not hung around your neck. Where'd that term come from? Because of this, because these things do happen on a regular basis. Again, it is the process of decisions in larger environments, or any environment where there's people that are responsible for operations and other people, okay, and they represent other people. It's not a dynamic that's going to go away. It's not, we can't all turn into a Greek society where everybody gets to stand on a rock and talk to everybody else equally. Doesn't happen. But we can make it better. We can hope that people that have finally gotten to a position where their purpose of doing what they're doing for those associations It has now finally given them enough authority that they can make those changes. I think one of the banes of all things is people are aspiring to do things to be kept in that position. Now, obviously, working for a job or a company, you want to keep the role that you have, and you want to keep the paycheck coming in and so forth. So you don't just abandon those decision values and say, well, I don't care what people think. If they fire me tomorrow, they fire me tomorrow. No, we kind of like the preservation of the income, and we like the preservation of what we've attained to get to that level and so forth. It's not reckless abandon, but it is the ability to go over and say that your intent is for the purpose of the success of what you're participating in. If you're working for a company, it's to the success of the company. Sometimes, in spite of your willingness to say, I could crush that peer person, take over what he's responsible for, and go up to the next step. That's a reality of business. You can go up to that person and say, you know what? We are in a position that we can work together, or I can work alone. You should try to think of working with me rather than always being against it because you haven't won well with your decisions. That leadership is very rare, I think. I don't think there's a lot of people that do that kind of collaborative relationships. They never try to overly crush everybody next to them. It's not always a, dog eat dog perspective. I think there's always a competition. It's healthy to have competition. You should walk into a meeting prepared to participate. Not knowing that nobody's not going to attack you doesn't mean that you don't walk in prepared to participate. And I think you should be called out if you walk in unprepared. And I think you should be called out if your decisions are not based in true facts and or information that supports it, other than just I'm thinking it's a red sky today. Prove it, make it. Most importantly, if you disagree, have a replacement for what you disagree about. It's okay that you want to poop on my idea all day, because that's the way decisions get made, is that you shoot at it and see if it still holds water. But if you do shoot at it, why? And what do you have as an alternative to what you're disagreeing with? Just don't disagree to disagree. Don't say, I think that's a dumb idea. Well, what's your idea? That's not important. I just think your idea is dumb. Doesn't solve anything. It doesn't get any closer to a solution. It just turns into a protagonist relationship of people going back and forth with each other. So my topic of it, based on that, was really talking about the process of initial decisions, which was the inspiration for what needs to be done. Think of it as, in the government perspective, a bill to do something positive turns into some warped, convoluted, multi-layered, stacked. I had to concede this for them to get this piece of junk that I didn't believe in, but by doing that, they supported mine to get what I really want to try to push through. So many good intents fall on the clipping room floor of bills and things like this. So too in corporate offices, on boardrooms. Great ideas get killed because of bad politics and bad leadership and bad means of making decision processes of, well, at the end of the day, who else is doing this? So you have initial decisions, which is even worth talking about further than the initial idea. The second level decisions, how does it affect us by doing this? And the final decision is, how does it affect me in this decision? That process, I hope, as real as it will continue to be, is optimistically, because of the pandemic and these associations, rethought about, we have a chance to take a leadership position in guidance of an industry that is absolutely battered and beaten from a labor perspective, from a supply chain perspective, from a demand inconsistency perspective. All those things are realities. What leadership does in a guiding beacon, okay, of what it is that we should aspire, what we can do directively. Like, we should think of it this way. We can look at it this way, rather than contrite, well, the sponsor that gave us a lot of money has this article about what they think we can put up there. And since we're obligated because of the monies they're supporting us, we're going to throw that up as our idea. That's crap. I see so many useless articles in organizations' distribution that are just nothing other than buyouts of sponsorships. And yeah, I know I'm calling everybody on that in a bad way. That's why we don't have sponsorships on this show, so I can talk like this, because I don't feel like, I better not say that about that because my sponsor might be upset that I said that. We don't have sponsors. We made that decision 8 years ago. We don't have sponsors. And yes, this is opinions, and this is me talking about opinions. I believe that is the bane of our associations, is the obligation financially, or compensation of financially, to lend the name of the association to basic people that paid for it. I think that happens all too often in so many different ways, is because it's not that it's bad content. Sometimes it's brilliant content. I'm not poo-pooing on every piece of content that all sponsors give us. I'm saying that a lot of times there's some, like, okay, well, we can't do it ourselves. We don't have somebody making it ourselves. and you have organizations that have very talented people come up with these ideas, and they propose the content, and it could be good content, but it's slanted. A lot of times it's slanted. I find it very hard to find content supported by sponsors that doesn't in some way reflect upon the sponsor, its value proposition for the content that they provided. And what, I'm saying negative to it, but that's the way of the world. That's how it works. I gave you a lot of money in support of you, but it's for the price of getting exposure based on the people that you talk to and represent, that people see me in a more positive light because of my association with your association. It's a purpose. It's a business decision. It's a financial business decision. So I'm not poo-pooing on it in any stretch. I'm just saying that there's a tolerance level of where you go up to that says, no, we're not going to post that piece of content because it's too slanted to just self-serving you as a sponsor and not really helpful to the concept of what the association represents. I feel that a lot of the associations through the pandemic moved that line because they were in financial issues. Every one of these associations had some interesting financial ups and downsies, like our industry did, some worse than others. And so they were more willing to bend their guidelines if somebody was walking in the door with a check that was something they could cash for cash flow. So that's where I'm asking the new boards to think how to clean up these thoughts, how to make me look stupid. Make me wrong. Please make me wrong. I will apologize to anybody that proves me wrong. And that's one other thing too, is like, I will stand adamant on my pile until somebody knocks me off, but I'll be also the first to acknowledge them that you proved that your idea, as different as I thought it was the better idea than mine. That's when good leadership works together. That's what happens in boardrooms where the purpose is clear. The process has its ups and downs, politics, ups and downs. You were wrong last time. I was right last time. Why shouldn't I be right this time? That's all good. Guided by a good leader that makes sure that they inspire the best out of each of the people that are participating so that the best decision for the purpose of the discussion gets made. All right, that was my soapbox for today. I wanted to talk a little bit about just some variations to some things. From a newsworthy perspective, I think that it's important to understand that we get very settled into what we see as the world around us when it comes to marketing. We see Facebook the way we've seen Facebook. And it has changed over the years of Facebook from being an upstart of what the hell do we have to worry about Facebook for, to, oh my gosh, if I'm not doing Facebook, I'm in trouble, to, oh my gosh, Facebook isn't what it used to be. We have, like any long-term relationship with anything, different cycles of our engagement and intent for them. Same too with Twitter, same too with Pinterest, same too with Instagram, on and on. And early on for me, TikTok was okay. And it's an age thing because I didn't see the value in TikTok. I didn't see why somebody would want to do that when that kind of stuff was already existing in other platforms. And yes, I understood from the dialogues, the purpose of that. Okay, it's because it's not the other platform that it already sparked interest because so many people didn't want to be on the Facebook platform or be on the Instagram platform. And so it had its value on being contra. And then it was a time consumption of people watching stuff. And then it started getting popularity because just like the early social platforms, we were turned into a rock star overnight. Facebook, somebody had no followers, no real people doing that, put something that went viral. And then all of a sudden they had tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers, and they were just the belle of the ball. And then poof, next day or 2 days later, they weren't. But they still kept the 100,000-ish people that they were connected to or whatever. TikTok, I started looking like that. And I dismissed it as, well, from a marketing perspective, and marketers are famous for destroying platforms because we go and going, oh, what are you guys doing? Well, let's see if we can sell some crap here. So I didn't see that with TikTok. Well, times change. And keeping up with varieties of platforms like TikTok, I was surprised by a number last night. Not last night, but last year, as I was putting together the year in review that we did show before the change of the year. I was looking at stuff and I came across an article I find fascinating. The number one website has always been Google, Facebook for the past years. Mostly Google, Facebook displaced it maybe 1 or 2 years. For early pandemic, Facebook, displaced it. As to time being spent on a website, that's what the real value metric is. What's the number one website that out of the whole world has the most time spent on it? Well, to my surprise, even though I saw it before in the lower listings of it, TikTok hit that top. TikTok at the end of the year was the number one time consumed website that people went to. And it sunk in for me that I have to do what I've done in times past with other social platforms. I have to rechange my perspective on this platform. And so I spent, out of all the other things doing it, I want to take time to just kind of cultivate my awareness and curiosity of this. I was looking for success stories of people that have used TikTok for their businesses. I will say in general, and this goes back to reminiscing, having had the length of time in the industry to say this, it reminds me of the early Facebook and the early Instagram and even early Twitter, where you made a large impact for a small entity. That's what I'm seeing a lot of right now. A lot of small, medium businesses are finding value organically and paid on TikTok. And I would challenge anybody to say, before you go jumping into create ad campaigns in TikTok, you better know the platform you're dealing with. Personal use does not mean you know the platform. Personal use means you know how to use it for yourself, for what you use it for, and what you're interested in, and what you look at, and so forth. Looking at it through the lens and the optics buzzword of marketing changes how you look at how the platform can be utilized to the benefit of your product sale. And TikTok is a hard nut to crack for that, because you first have to have an identity that it can be put onto the platform. So I'm going to make coffee. It's not about just broadcast. It's not about this is what I have, room and rate. This is my product. This is where I'm at. You should come over and see it. That'll never go anywhere. No matter how much money you put at it, you'll get traffic numbers, but not engagement numbers. And that's just, glamour metrics. So TikTok, to be effective, has to be about creating a personality that is very reminiscent of what Instagram's personality generation has been. You have to be more first person conversational than you do third person overview. You have to pick voice that is different than you normally have on a Facebook dialogue, which is usually varied and has a longer timeline to it and has different purposes to it and more interactions with it. TikTok is very much, if you're interested, you're going to do it. If you're not interested, it gets tossed away. Swipe kind of thing. So you have to have something that resonates quickly, is personal directly, and has value for people to be interested in. And is very temporal, meaning it's very short-lived. Instagram is similar to that, but people follow Instagram stories a little bit because they want to see what's next. That kind of lends itself to the TikTok platform in the degree, because once you have garnered their interest that you're there, that their awareness of you being there, they will be interested in looking at you again. Should they see something interesting again, they'll give you the benefit of okay, well, let's see this guy or girl or place is still doing something I find interesting. The mercurial growth of that is profound. We've seen that it hits news features like this person did this, and now they have such and such TikTok followers and so forth. We see that viral impact, very similar to the way the early social media platforms worked as well, where there was wow, this person's popped up. And that's because of the volume of data of stuff that's on the platform, as well as the interest category that you resonated with. And as Facebook got to what it did and the billions of people and so forth, you really were a lot of noise. And of course, Facebook monetization, where your organic voice went down to zero almost, and your paid voice was what was allowable. TikTok still has a large organic voice and a very fractional paid voice. And so because of that, the virility of being able to get in front of people organically is a lot stronger. And that's the element part I want to keep in front of everybody. TikTok is a platform that you still can influence organic engagement at the numbers we used to remember on the other social platforms. But to do so, you have to have an individual identity that is relatable, a message that is resonating to the people that contextually you're creating content for, and you have to maintain the consistency of creativity and consistency of distribution that is similar to the Twitters and the link and the Instagrams of the world, which, if you've watched my show enough to know, I say after Facebook and Pinterest, potentially, depending upon content of what you're doing, like Smart Business and so forth, getting into Instagram and Twitter has a certain perishability, consistency, And it's not for the faint-hearted, and it's not like, well, how much do we spend on that advertising campaign, Bob? How much do we make off it? It's not an ROI conversation. It's an investment in awareness, investments in branding, an investment in voice for your business. And those things don't always equate well with people that write checks, just saying. So that with TikTok is interesting. I have an article that came up about small and medium businesses using TikTok brand awareness and boost sales. It's more retail specific because it's more, look at this sweater I'm wearing. You don't want to buy it? That kind of thing. But hotels and destinations and places are changing how we're relating to people. We, unfortunately, as an industry in general, still look at our industry traditionally in marketing, which is product, presentation, sales. It's not. With social being what it is, and as much as it is a part of our lives, it's not so much a part of our marketing discussions. We talk about ROI still. Social is not about ROI. I mean, you might say, that's silly, Lauren, why are we doing it? Social is a necessary evil of communication. Social, if you look at it from a communication first, sales later, is a valuable tool because it amplifies business. What you do in social is like an electric guitar and an amp. The more you do in social, the more amplification in your conversion channels you get, the more amplification for your website, your other campaigns from meta search to whatever, all are amplified by what you do in social because the story dialogues contribute to the awareness, contribute to the engagement, contribute to the conversion on channels that provide and promote that. I'm not saying that social can't give you direct channel conversion. It's just not your main reliant value to it. So think of it as a communication tool that amplifies marketing conversions on all channels. That's the real value of social. Then as you get into social, you have the mainstays, storyline, dialogues like we talk about with Facebook, where you have primarily 5 storylines between local interests, off the beaten path, cultural, culinary, family, and soft adventure kind of stuff. That you create storylines based on the content that are relevant to each of those, which are your demographics, your personas. Your personas are what you use to target your campaigns based on the historical of your guests. We've had these discussions in the live show many times. So the idea of TikTok is that you have to define what you're really looking for audience-wise. And do you have an audience that you can talk to? And if you say, well, I'm a little vanilla, low brand box in the middle of nowhere, you'd be surprised the fact that you can create such a unique persona that you use on TikTok that you can turn it into the belle of the ball that totally smokes anybody in your market, anywhere around your market. Because big flags are saying, we're not going to waste our time doing that. And if they do, they come off fake and weird anyway, which is why big businesses haven't truly cracked the nut on TikTok yet. And you as a small business, it makes you small and nimble. It's like, hey, I got people coming in that do TikTok. And apparently being the #1 website in the world, there's a lot of us that are doing that. Which also switched me to another side of conversation, to another platform that is constantly impressing me and surprising me. And we simulcast on it, which is Twitch. Twitch, and this in Discord. If you're not familiar with Discord, go look it up. I use it for a lot of things because I'm so much into the VR space, and a lot of the content that is related to my research and development of ad campaigns and VR environments and so forth is more found on Discord than anything else. And Twitch is a lot like that too. These are channels of communication that if you're looking at how the river's flowing, up top may be going smooth, which most people, large businesses, see the the river's there, but they don't know the swift current that's underneath. This is the swift current underneath. This is the stuff that's happening for the people that are going to be the next people of, or the things that are being done, or how they're getting done. And everyone just relates that Google won the race. Google is the winner. Google's the one that has all the information. And yeah, you're right for now. But what you're not getting is the Discords and the Twitches of the world that have a whole other culture, the Reddits of the world, that have a whole different culture of content, that has a whole different means of delivery, have a whole different means of engagement that is not familiar to most people. And so because of that, they're not even focused on their value proposition. I made this example in a live show a few weeks ago that I was very impressed with, a young girl in Portland, Oregon. It was a rainy, cold night, and she was doing a live broadcast on Twitch where she was literally just personally with her phone, walking from coffee shop to coffee shop down a certain street in Portland that's famous for multiple coffee shops doing different things and so forth. And she was broadcasting live, and sharing her going into the store and then flipping the camera around. It's like, okay, or flipping the camera view around to show the menu in front of her and so forth. So this place is great for Sumatra, blah, blah, blah. And, they do this, this, and this. And she's talking, she already talked to the coffee shop. She was going to be coming in, talked to the fact, that she could talk to somebody about what the coffee shop was, got some coffee, showed the coffee. Okay, you're thinking, well, that's just like a Facebook Live or whatever. The connection to the Twitch was she had several thousand people watching her live, and then her patron and patron, it's going to be a patron like tequila. Her patron account, I watched, I don't know, over $1,000 easy for the 44 minutes, 45 minutes I was watching her, of people that were knocking $1, $2, $5. Thanks for letting me know. I was thinking we're going to Portland. Hey, show us the menu again. What will come? Do they froth it well? I'm like, I'm not really a coffee aficionado, but apparently there's a lot of people that are very much into variations of coffee. I mean, I roast my own coffee, but these people are way up there with knowledge and so forth. And she's talking and sharing and so forth. And yes, it's a cute girl. And for the time she's on the camera, it adds to the whole thing. Like, cute girl. But I didn't see anybody really being, scummy in the chat on the side. And she's responding to people in chat, say, "Hey, Lauren, thanks for the $1. Thanks, Bob, for the $1, whatever." She's being knowledgeable of it. To be honest with you, she was only thanking people that were $25 and up, because there's so many other ones and fives that were throwing around. And I'm guesstimating the money, but I can easily say that I counted 1,000 just in general rounding numbers for that whole process. So more than that. And she was still going when I decided I had to get off. So the idea of these platforms having value, which is, the reason why I was involved with the Twitch, watching, catching, and finding her, was I was just curious because we broadcast on Twitch. The reason we broadcast on Twitch is because it goes on PlayStation and Xboxes, which, if you look at news and information, is turning into a large channel of how people access media. We talk about, what happened to cable TV and what happened to satellite TV, and everyone's cord cutting and all this other stuff. Well, where are they getting their sources of media? Well, it's internet. We're just now rolling out with the whole 5G rollout, which is going to change our whole router Wi-Fi configuration capabilities, where we're not going to need to have a wire run to our property and connect to it to a router in our business or our home to broadcast from. It's going to be so prevalent everywhere that you just literally have to have the units connect to it. We've dealt with and been very comfortable with smart TVs. The fact that our TV now isn't just about putting an antenna cable in the back and adjusting an antenna and or a satellite dish and having whatever they provide that we paid for. But there's so many sources between the Netflix, the Hulus, the Peacocks, and everything else that we have. I mean, our TV channel, Hospitality Channel, is literally in that same medium where, and we talked about OTAs and OTT platforms and so on, OTT platforms, about all this distribution of content. That's our Hospitality Channel is literally on that. You go to Roku, you go to Apple, you go to Android, you go to Amazon TVs, and you find Hospitality Channel, our TV channel. We're broadcasting on it now. And our content's about it. And there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, actually, of channels for a variety of stuff that aren't anything about being NBC, ABC, and CBS or CNN or any of those. And you see how many flavors that all of those have created. Look at Disney Plus. It went from non-existing 2 years ago to being the #1 on-demand channel. So because of that, I mean, they actually, their 5-year goal was met in 7 months as to the number of subscribers. It's amazing the millions and millions of people have signed up. Well, all of those channels, it turns out that it's just not smart TVs that have media access. The Microsofts of the world and the PlayStations of the world realize that they've always been used for this kind of medium as well, where you can watch TV through them and all this other stuff. Well, Twitch is a medium of those, which is why we went and did a Twitch channel broadcast from all this, the simulcasting we do. Because if you watch stuff on Twitch, you're seeing me. You're seeing my content. I can't keep up with the chatter on the side. If there is some, I usually go back and look, which is why I say and thank you for those people that had. That's why I say it'd be great if you can join us on the actual broadcasting platform that uses the Bitly here over in live webinar, where Ariel's at with us, that can go over and actually dialogue with us, send chats to us. We can invite onto the show and what have you. Because I've long since giving up the distraction of trying to watch. When I had multiple co-hosts with me, which we're going to get to, by the way, we're going to have other hosts come in. I'm just trying to get them scheduled in the process. I had the chance to go look and see dialogue that was coming in on Facebook, which were on 6 different pages, on Twitter, which were on 4 different pages, on LinkedIn, which were on 1 page, because that's all LinkedIn allows you to do, on YouTube, which were on 6 pages. So we're in multiple channels coming through like that. And everybody can comment on those channels as they're going through. Well, Twitch is no different. And Twitch is tons of comments and people and so forth. Again, we're not doing this show to monetize. I don't have my Patreon account assigned to it. It's connected to it, but I don't have it turned on because I don't really use Patreon. I just do it so I understand what the Patreon account works and looks like and how it functions and everything else. Curiosity kills a cat, right? But I'm not doing the Twitch channel to do that for. But I see the value in like watching this young girl in Portland go over and do this, where she literally walked around, got a few cups of coffee, talked about her experience. It was a really cold Portland day. She walked away and banked over $1,000 that I can count in 45 minutes. And I'm sure she did more than that for more time than she spent on that. And I found her while she was well underway and she stayed longer after I left. So that's a pretty good night haul when it comes to that. The nice part is she has the audience, the interest, and found a niche of conversation. So how does that work for us for marketing? Well, first is find these people in your market. Find out who is doing that kind of stuff in your market and whether you have any relationship value to them. Like influencers, like we talked about. We've gone through the cycle of influencers. We've gone through the large influencers, the micro influencers. We've gone through the contract influencers. We've gone through the bogus influencers. We've gone through the people that are trying to be influencers. These people are pulling an audience, making money off of it. Rather than trying to pay them necessarily to do this, what can we offer them that they would include us in what they're doing? Would be the first question. Second question would be, can we pay you to be a participant in what you're doing so you can feature and focus us? That'd be the second question. The third is, can we do it ourselves? Do we have the dedicated ability? And I'm not saying resources because we've had that discussion many weeks now. Do we have the dedicated ability to do something like this that can garner the attention, can garner the interest, and translate that to something of an awareness? Very much for the same reasons why we're doing a Twitch account now, is to garner more audience, to give ourselves in front of more people that may not have known about us because of the medium that they choose to watch their content on. That's why we picked Twitch. That's why it's good to think that there's people out there like that. Discord, whole nother platform of opportunity of conversations. It's not so much about video. It's about niche interests. And it's not, I mean, it can get micro niche, but it's just general dialogues of stuff, much like you see in Facebook where you have groups about World War II warships and things like this. You're like, well, that sounds pretty interesting. And I didn't know other people liked that. So let me sign up for that group and share common interest. Discord's like that. Discord's also a means of communication. Instead of going to a website and looking at a FAQ, Discord is very much about announcing an entry. I know this firsthand from the development usage of it when it comes to programs and apps and VR environments and so forth, and a whole host of other stuff. I'm just touching the parts I've touched. That there's tons of platforms of interest. If you want to learn and discover stuff, I wouldn't say it's a Wikipedia, but it is an active dialogue about current things, not news. I'm talking about current things like how do I build a JavaScript code for gateway entry rollover for such and such, that kind of stuff. And also, I love this VR environment, blah, blah, blah. Is there anybody else that loves this VR game too? Let's talk about all the fun games we're having. It's social, it's technical, it's conversational, but it's more importantly content. And if you can derive a way of cracking that nut of sharing content that's edible for the people that use that platform, that's just not, hey, we got rooms and rates this weekend. If you're interested, that will not go on that platform. What you can talk about is being in the market that you're in, doing what you're doing, the product that you have, and talking through what you're doing and how you're doing it in a first-person way. You'll get people engaged with you, which makes it fun and fascinating. So we've kind of run the course of all this. I didn't want to get too divergent, but I want to make sure our news categories of things like TikTok and Twitch and Discord begin to come into our dialogue. Are they silver bullets that will solve our marketing problems? Absolutely not. But they're contributions to the puzzle that creates a clear picture of what it is that we can do for the things that derive our business. And when it comes to my statement of topic of get in line or make a new one, making leadership decisions in 2022, I want to do it as a rally cry for a new year. We're in a pandemic. We're still in a pandemic. As of this broadcast, we're still talking in terms of high numbers in the hopes that they come down. We're dealing with travel restrictions. We've talked about, COVID information and so forth. we're in an active dynamic dialogue. And we've certainly had shows about dynamic budgets and dynamic marketing and dynamic scenario development and so forth. There's get off of the new normal conversation. This is normal. If it changes in the future, that's the new normal. This is normal now. And for that reason, we need to treat it as what we have to deal with daily. So I hope this show helps those people figure or just make you think about things you may not have thought about or disagree with in a way that you want to send me an email, which you can always do at lauren@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. I answer every email in relationship to the podcast, every information, email to the live show, anything like that. You can find our show always. There's a web channel that we have, but there's a website called hospitalitychannel.tv. It's like linear TV. We take all of our shows and put them like reruns of I Love Lucy. It's a chronological listing show, next show. It's free. You can watch all of our old archive shows, both on that and our podcast, which we do. I'll be doing a podcast where the recap of the show will be included with that. We talk a little bit more in depth about certain tools. But last week's discussion was about SMS platforms and how to use them, how to integrate them into platforms that do other stuff. That was last week's. I'm not going to talk about this week's because I'm going to write it after we're done with the show. And it's not something we pre-programmed for. So I hope you listen to our podcast. You can find it on 39 different platforms that we distribute to, plus also your Amazon, the Siri, Alexa, and Google, my Google platform. You just have to ask for the Hospitality Marketing Podcast, and it'll play it for you. So you can do that. Matter of fact, a lot of our audiences do it through Alexa, which is really pretty cool. So I hope you enjoy this live show. If you have any suggestions of topics and comments that you'd like to see in this dialogue, and or also guest hosts that you think would be very valuable to hear from, by all means, please send me those information pieces. I'll be happy to respond to you and also solicit them and talk to them about what they would like to do the show about and who they would like to invite on themselves. It's an always and welcome broadcast. This is just not me on my soapboxes, but it was a transition process from how we used to do it to doing it now this way, to transitioning into the idea that we're going to bring back co-hosts and begin to diversify content with other people. So with that, I thank you all for the privilege of your time. I do look forward to speaking with you next week, 11:30 a.m. And my name is Lauren Gray. And again, thank you for the time today. Ariel, thank you for jumping on to this particular channel. And for everyone else that I'll go back and look at on the other channels, I also want to thank you very much for your time spent today and for listening to our rebroadcast later. So until next week, thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy.